Well, welcome back. Joining us in the studio once again, we have one of our favorite guests, Mr. Phil Hager, who is the Planning and Zoning Officer for Arundel County. Mr. Hager, welcome back.
Thanks very much. I appreciate you inviting me back.
We like having you back. You are always the guest with the best dressed feet. So
we have a fine python today, we understand.
Oh, yep, these are
fine python.
These are python.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So we frequently have been talking about planning and zoning on the show and the listening sessions, and now that those are complete, what happens next?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to hear about. But before we go there, just for a moment, I wanted to let you know that we've completed 8 listening sessions. Nearly 300 people were involved in person at those. We've had online opportunities that we've had another nearly 400 people participating in our online surveys. We did 7 councilmanic tours looking at planning and zoning issues in the field, where we actually went out with my team and we looked at issues and concerns throughout the county. And my staff and I have attended over 50 community and stakeholder meetings over the last several months.
Ooh.
Between 20 and 50 people at all meetings. So we figure we've
Covered your bases.
It's fair to say you've listened.
Between 2,000 and 3,000 people have been involved in our sessions in one way or another.
That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, we feel like we've had an opportunity to get to know things a lot better. And I think that the people of the communities have been appreciative. We may not have done a very good job, or at least as good a job as the people of this county expect in the past. But over the past 6 or 7 months, we've really made an effort to try to reach out to those folks. And I think it's working, and because one of the things is it's a good place to be, but we're almost victims of our success in that, because people are wanting more. What's our next piece? What can we do? Can you give us more data? We want to look at things too. So that's like, well, okay, now we did our public engagement process. We talked to all the people. Now we want you to go on hold while we go back to our laboratory, so to speak, do our analyses, then we'll come back to you. They're like, but no, we want
We want
more.
to come back next week.
Yeah. So
when you like something,
So
you want more.
yeah, so we actually take that as a compliment. We're happy about that the people are anxious and interested in wanting to do. And of course, this is the least exciting part of our overall process, that these background studies and analyses that we do. We look at transportation functions and adequate public facilities. And we look at changes that have taken place since the last plan. Where do we need to look at new land use? Where do we need to look at infrastructure and things like that? It's critically important, but it's not real exciting. But there's a strong group of people who are anxious to see that and to participate.
Good.
That's wonderful. So now that the listening sessions are done.
Now what? What are you going to do
now-
now? So now you're going to do models,
Yeah.
and you're going to do what all the analysis.
Right, and we're hoping to have that process complete by the end of the summer, so that we can begin, further community efforts and outreach, because people are going to be wanting to know what's next and
What's the result of them coming? Yep, that's right.
Yes.
And there were a couple things that I love this chicken and the egg argument, because I do the social media for the county and I see what people are saying, and online you get a lot of, oh, they're doing that. Well, where'd they get that idea from? Like, it's a bad thing that we took everything people said and made actions resulting from what they said. And I think one of them was the county executive smart growth package of legislation. It freezes zoning, no upzoning until the GDP, General Development Plan, is complete. It help me out here. It puts teeth into the small area plans and forces a review of the small area plans, which everyone was talking about.
One of the difficulties of the General Development Plan, or any other comprehensive plan, is that it is not in and of itself a regulatory instrument. And people say, well, it's in the plan, so it has to be. Well, the plans, time and time again, have been held by the courts, and this is how they're established in the land use article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. They are a guidance document. In order to fulfill what goes into the plan, or that guide, or that idealistic document, it is regulation changes, rezonings, new ways of doing things, new policy edicts, things like that. And that's how you implement the plans. And in particular, we've heard a lot of different concerns from the public over the last 6 or 7 months. And I appreciate having an administrative office that listens And we've sat down and talked about a lot of these things, and the executive has moved forward with this smart growth package that includes a resolution to enact a moratorium on rezonings until the GDP is complete. It's looking at the modifications process. It's looking at more stringent standards for variances and special exceptions. It's looking at transparency issues like increasing the notice requirements for special exceptions, variances, and the community meetings, all in an effort to make sure that the people have an opportunity to be engaged. And it's clear that in this county, the people are very much interested in being engaged, and we want to make sure we do what we can to facilitate that process.
Now, 2 decades ago, we had small area plans. What is that, and are we going to implement that again?
A decision was made in 1997, and that decision probably wasn't made very public, but that decision was to abandon the 16 small area plans and their processes that they had just spent the last 15 years preparing. And
Because it's a lot of work.
it's a lot of work.
That's why.
Well, it may very well be the truth, the facts. Certainly, planning at any kind is resource and manpower intensive, but it's important, and we need to do it. So they made that decision, and they wanted to move forward then with just one county-wide plan, which is why that's why we had the last planning process done. I think I said 1997. I meant 2007. I apologize. The 1997 plan was the plan that established the small area plans, and then a short time later we decided to abandon them.
And real quick, just as a point of clarity here, a small area plan is basically you put together a committee of residents for the different geographic areas of the county, and they come up as a citizen-led kind of what they want the community to look like.
Well, they
Is
certainly
that accurate?
participate. The planning process, the plans are actually prepared by staff. But the idea of
They're
having,
led by citizens.
yeah, we have a very strong leadership component of citizens within that given area. When you break the county into smaller pieces geographically, then you're able to tackle issues at a micro level. You're able to get into things at a greater level of analysis and specificity that isn't possible when you look at things countywide. So the exec is very much in support of the idea of small area planning, and one of the things that will be incorporated into this GDP is the blueprint for our next round of small area plans, which are going to follow the adoption of this plan and the adoption of the comprehensive rezoning, which is scheduled to take place in the 2020 timeframe. And there's legislation that's proposed right now to actually mandate that small area plan so that we can't make a casual decision like we did in 2007 to simply abandon something that we've invested in. So it will be very difficult.
That's the teeth. Okay,
That's the
got
teeth on that, absolutely.
And a quick question, Phil, sorry to interrupt. There's so much detail here, and I'm thinking about what people are saying as you're answering the question. The moratorium on zoning changes, that is, we always say that is until the conclusion of the GDP. If I'm sitting back and I'm wondering, well, what does that mean? 6 months it's over or something like that? Can you have an idea of how long that will probably be in place?
It's our expectation that we're going to be delivering a completed draft plan to the Planning Advisory Board in December of 2019.
Okay. So the end of next calendar year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So so we're about 2 years out from that.
Right.
So 2 years, no zoning changes.
Right. And it's important to note, too, that going back to the topic of small area plans just for a moment, an awful lot of work went into those plans that have now been abandoned, and we don't want the work that was done to be abandoned, nor do we want the people who participate in that process to feel that their work wasn't worthy. So one of the things that we're working on right now, and the exec has directed us to resuscitate the old small area plans that have already been done, breathe life into them, go back and look at the recommendations of those plans, see what was recommended, what's still viable, what do we want to do, and that can become some of the baseline work for moving forward as a jumping off point for this GDP.
Like a good plan.
What else are you going to do?
What else?
That's great. What else are you going to do?
Well, we're also working on a parole plan.
Okay.
Comprehensive plan for that part of the county, and continuing to do our work of implementation associated with the Odenton Town Center plan. And someday I would love it if you had me come back. We can talk about some of the other activities within our department.
Please.
But this is just a long-range planning section. We have a zoning section, a development section, a critical area section, and a research team. So we have a lot of other things that we're working on. So we're very happy to be involved in a lot of different pieces of the county.
Absolutely.
What's the best way for the public to find out more about the GDP?
Well, certainly our website is growing and continues to get more information, and that is aacounty.org/2040, Plan 2040.
Plan 2040, yep.
Plan 2040.
Yeah.
All right, there it
Very
is.
good. Well, we thank you so much for taking your time and coming on. It's always so wonderful to have you here. And yes, please come back and let us know about the other things
bet.
that
You bet.
you do. So-
Next time on Week in Review,
Next time.
R2 versus R5. What does it mean?
We appreciate all that you're
bet.
doing
Thank you very
with our
much.
county and all the work you do. We'll be right back with more Week in Review right after this. Don't go anywhere.